You agree with her that despite how you may feel about him, despite how maybe half of Republican or independent voters feel about him, he could pull that off here in New Hampshire this evening?
Well, I wish we had a full half of Republicans who felt that way about him. We wouldn't be where we are now. But I think that expecting an outcome that's in excess of 50% for Donald Trump is really reasonable. It's probably right where we're going to land. Turnout is going to be enormous today. There are some of the Republican strongholds in our state whose turnout has already exceeded what was expected for the entire day. And an argument can be made for either candidate on who that benefits, but I think in the end that's really benefits Donald Trump.
That has been the conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
But also in terms of the geography that you just mentioned and those Boston suburbs, if you will, that are just north of the New Hampshire border, is that Trump country? We're talking about college-educated, more affluent voters.
Yeah.
That could go either way.
This is the only thing that has caused me to second-guess myself in the last several days. However, I think it's still going to go for Trump, even though we see these other types of breakdowns across the board. The party's with Trump. Like, it's something that's just hard to wrap your head around, but the party is with Trump. And in order for Nikki Haley to really have made a difference and gotten in there, she would have had to make up about 17 points in the last 3 or 4 days. And that's really, really hard to do. That is a big number to overcome. I think that we're going to see Trump over 50%. I think Haley could end up, under 40. And we'll sort of see how that turns out. But with these kinds of turnout numbers, it usually benefits enthusiasm over any kind of practical thinking.
You say the party is with Trump, and even those who are outwardly with Nikki Haley ultimately may say they're going to be with Trump at the end of the game anyway if he's the nominee, including the governor here, Chris Sununu. We spoke with him a few days ago about this. Just take a listen, if you will, to some of what he told us.
He doesn't believe in limited government. He believes in this kind of dictatorship. He doesn't believe in local control. He believes in Washington. So those are not Republican values.
But you have said because if he were to be the Republican nominee and because you are a Republican, you would support him.
Yeah, I think most people would. That shouldn't surprise anybody, yeah.
Even though you don't think he actually carries the values of the Republican Party?
Well, look, Joe Biden, that's how bad Joe Biden is.
Does that not, in your mind, Jennifer, speak to the idea of inevitability of Trump being the nominee anyway? Even if he's out stumping for Haley, he's been all over the media. He has been a very active surrogate, not just someone who gave her an endorsement. But did he really help her?
Not when he says those things, but it's not just Chris Sununu. It's Senator Rubio and Congresswoman Mace, and kind of go through your list. Tim Scott, just a day or two ago, he's here stumping for the president. The party has lined up behind Donald Trump, and the base lined up behind Donald Trump a long time ago. But if you listen to what Governor Sununu, and Chris Sununu is a skilled politician, he's an accomplished politician, but when he says Donald Trump isn't a Republican, he wants a dictatorship. But yeah, I'll vote for him if he's the party nominee. Of course, I'm a Republican. I am a big believer that that's the problem. And it's not just Chris. Like I said, it goes right up and down the party when it comes to elected leaders and the base. But when we sit here and say, no, he's a dictator, but I'll vote for him anyway, it's really hard to convince Republican voters that they shouldn't vote for him as well.
Yeah. So let's just get a gut check here, because you just played out potential numbers that would coincide with the polling that we've seen. Donald Trump hit 60 today in the Suffolk poll for the first time.
Yes.
I know people are still voting, but
you can't overcome 60%. You can't overcome 60%. If Donald Trump wins tonight by a sizable margin, the primary is over and we are in the general election.
The primary is over. So the general election starts tomorrow morning in that world. I
would say the general election starts tonight. It's in that world. And when you talk about 60%, his goal essentially by summer is to get to 70, 75%. If he's already at 60% tonight, then it's hard to see what happens other than that.
Just quickly, Nikki Haley is saying, I'm staying in this for the long haul. It's South Carolina Super Tuesday. That's the messaging from her campaign, pointing out specifically a lot of Super Tuesday states are open or semi-open primaries. We have 30 seconds. If she can't do it in New Hampshire, could she do it in any one of those other states?
No, I don't think so. The rules for so many of the Super Tuesday states have changed this year in this cycle. Winner takes all. I don't know where there's a chance for her to really pick up any significant delegates, but there is an advantage for her to staying in, a small one. If anything happens to Trump, she's the last person standing and she's still there.